Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to a bonus edition of the Last Round Podcast. Here with a returning guest. He's been on quite a few times here on the Last Round Boxing Podcast. I believe the last time he was on was sometime towards the end of last year in 2023. But following some breaking news within the last 24 hours or so about the reports that Saudi Arabia, the Saudi investment fund, is looking into creating a boxing league and potentially bringing all the promoters together and I guess buying them out, you know, according to some details. Who better to return to talk about this than digital sports executive and who's been on, as I mentioned, a couple times here on the Last Round Podcast. Jay Chaudhry returns to the Last Round. Thank you for returning, Jay.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
So, you know, we were talking about this earlier throughout the day. We were trying to get this going here on the podcast, kind of emergency podcast here to react to this this big news that, as I mentioned in your past appearances here on the Last Round Boxing Podcast, you've talked in great depth about this possibly happening in the future. I think you even said that you were very, very certain something like this would probably happen. So kind of going to the report here, this is from REUTERS. And also the New York Times also reported this as well. It said Saudi Wealth Fund holding talks to create boxing league. And I'll just read the first paragraph here. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund is in discussions with multiple boxing stakeholders to create a league, potentially reshaping the competitive landscape of the sport. People familiar with the matter told REUTERS. What's your reaction to that, man?
Well, the reaction is just like everybody else. It's exciting, number one, because now we finally get to see an entity that's outside of the boxing space come in to fund and execute all the problems that the boxing business has seen and suffered with over the last decades or so, for multiple decades. And now we finally, for the boxing fan, it's everything that they could ask for because you can get the matchups that you've been regularly seeing coming out of Saudi. It's great news for sure.
So as I mentioned, you know, we've talked about this on your past guest appearances here on the Last Round about this stuff, you know, and then about the zone coming in and, you know, all these promoters. And we've talked about, you know, you give your opinions on obviously different, the major promoters, especially Golden Boy, Matchroom, Queensberry, PBC. We talked about PBC signing their deal with Amazon and what, you know, your take on that deal and what you thought the future was going to hold going forward for PBC and all that. I mean, how do you think this would shape itself? You know, let's start with financially. What do you think, just based on what you think? Obviously, you know, we're just on the outside looking in, but how much would it take here to buy out all these major promotions? We
talked about this last time. We were talking in the billions, if you remember or not. But then we also have to look at the longevity of each promotion company as well. At that time, PBC had a couple of the top guys, and now they've all kind of fizzled away or they're on the way out the door to retirement. Matchroom is certainly up there. Golden Boy is certainly up there. Top Rank, of course, is up there. Queensberry just put on an amazing fucking show with the 5-on-5, so they're certainly in the running now for to be a top contender for the reason for Saudi to invest in them as well. PBC is kind of the odd one out. I mean, they do have the track record for being such an incredible American platform for pay-per-views, but then again, those were done through fighters who at the time were on the top of their game as well. In recent fighters news, I don't think that they can hit that mark unless Canelo stays with them. But let's put all that aside and talk about that number of $4 or $5 billion that's floating around. I do think that number holds warrant for sure. I think the $4 or $5 billion is pretty much a drop in the ocean for Saudi. In fact, if you just do some simple math to see what $5 billion means to somebody who's in the trillions, it's the cost of a $5,000 dinner, right? For the average person. So somebody like me and you, if we drop 5 G's at the bar this weekend, it certainly, you know, it'd be a what the fuck kind of moment. And was that really worth it? That better fucking do something for us down the line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus somebody who's a trillionaire spending $5 billion is literally spending $5,000 at a dinner. Where it's a little fucking drop in the ocean for them, and for them to take this to where they want to go, which is past 2030, is certainly if to strategize it correctly, which I think they will, it certainly be worth their investment. And that's another thing I want to talk about too. When you're talking about platforms, for example, look, I came on the scene in 2017. Right when I first made my first introduction, like my brand came visibly available in boxing when I started Break Media Group, and I started talking about DAZN. Everybody should look out for them because they were the only platform at the time. This is back in 2017, who Eddie was talking to, and nobody believed what the fuck was happening at the time because they just couldn't see the long-term goal of it. The long-term goal in 2017 was audience acquisition, subscribers, and turn everything digital. Right, and at the time, ESPN, Foxes. None of these sports platforms were doing that, right? So DAZN was kind of the first ever platform to have a streaming exclusive sports content network. Yeah, we had ESPN Plus and all that stuff, but they weren't streaming focused. They were more like broadcast plus cable, right? So now we have DAZN coming out the woodwork in 2017, telling everybody they're going to take over. Like let's paint it with a paintbrush and let's say it for what it is. Yeah, they came out with this whole promise that the pay-per-view will be no more model. It didn't work out. Get over it. Like we're here now, right? And now we're here. In 2024, DAZN has put in 6 years of audience acquisition legwork. What I mean by that, they built programs. They built the the DAZN MF. What's it called again? Sorry, the Misfits MF series.
Boxing? Yeah,
Misfits Boxing. They put on great documentaries. They put on amazing shows featuring Matchroom, Queensberry, Golden Boy, Topper. Like the who's who of boxing promoters have fought on DAZN, minus PBC. So they've already put in all the dollars. They put in all the legwork. They put in all the marketing, all the materials. And then, so when I see people talk about like, oh, DAZN or Eddie Hearn blew $1 billion of DAZN money, like what the fuck are you guys talking about? For anybody who's ever been part of a startup, there's a term called sunk cost, where a company puts forth a reasonable amount of money up front, and they know that they're not going to get anything intangible in return right away. They see it as a long-term investment that'll inevitably pay off. Every startup goes through this, and if you haven't been part of a startup, you should shut the fuck up and stop talking because you have no idea how media startups work. You have no idea how content works. You have no idea how to turn a 16-year-old fan into a 19-year-old fan. When he's a grown adult, he's able to make his own decisions with his own credit card without using mommy and daddy's card. You know are you following what I'm saying?
I get
so. There's a strategy behind what DAZN was doing. There's a strategy behind what they're doing with the MF series because they're starting young. They're grooming. I don't want to use that word grooming, but they're actually, they have a plan in place for all the 13, 14, 15-year-olds who are watching these fucking YouTubers fight. They're going to convert to a buyer when they're 19 plus. They're the ones who will be gambling on DraftKings, on Better, on Bet365 once they hit a certain age. Right, so they've planted all the seeds, right, bro? Now we're in 2024. We have the opportunity, or we don't have an opportunity. This is actually going to happen. I'll mark my words. Where somebody like King Turkey is going to come in and blow a fucking few $1 billion to make boxing right again. And who's going to win? The platform who's in the lead. You think ESPN Plus is going to have a bidding war? They don't hold no value to fucking somebody like DAZN, who spent the hard fucking years of data research on the boxing fan base, right? You think Amazon's gonna fucking compete with DAZN? Give me a fucking break. Those guys just came into boxing last year and they put on one of the most horrible fucking productions I've seen. Right? It took them a long time to catch up to DAZN. I'm not talking about global reach here. Yes, Amazon Prime has. Are you still there? Yeah, you're still there. Amazon Prime has a global reach of 265 million homes. Look, I was already on a podcast talking about how those numbers break down, and only 8% of Americans watch boxing, okay? And Amazon's top-rated show right now on sports streaming is the NFL series. And one of their biggest viewership for NFL was I don't want to mistake here, but I think it was the Chiefs versus the Vikings in September 2023. 15 million people watched that game, and Amazon promised the advertiser 12% of viewership, or 12 million people would be watching it. So they overstayed their welcome there with their viewership, which was amazing for NFL and Amazon Prime's deal. Boxing can't offer those kind of numbers to Amazon Prime, specifically PBC, because PBC has never invested in their fucking data ever. Now we're going to rewind a little bit and go back to 2014, where Al Heyman was also given $1 billion. So let's look at the difference between DAZN giving $1 billion to Eddie Hearn and Walter and Reed giving Al Heyman $1 billion. Who did the most with that money? I think Al Heyman did a fantastic job with NBC. when the series first came out. But I think he just stopped giving a fuck at one point because there was no future left of this. He never put it into any content programming. He never launched any news channels. He never launched any content wing. He never launched original series, right? He just focused solely on the boxing events, which were great for boxers. They made all that money. But what happens when a guy like the King Turkey comes in, spends $4 billion, buys everybody up? Now everybody's on the same playing field. Which streamer, which platform makes the most sense for them to continue doing business with? It's DAZN. Right, so now we're going into a time and space where all these fighters are going to be. There's going to come a time now, bro. There's going to be some very, very difficult conversation to have with every fighter across the board, and it is unfortunately or fortunately going to work in the most likely scenario how the UFC is working with Dana White, where it's going to be $50,000. That's your minimum. Go for it. You know what I mean? The top level pay-per-view fighters, they'll get their own little treatment because they do bring in tons of eyeballs. They have track records, but for everybody else. We have a pay-as-you-go system. Take it or leave it. You don't want to go fucking fight for somebody else, right? So he's going to take complete ownership of how the boxing structure is going to work. And I also think that the current promoting landscape is going to change drastically because promoters are no longer going to have to do any negotiations, right? It's whatever King Turk and his boys want. And they're going to turn into just event organizers, booking agents for the fighters pretty much.
Staying on that topic, Jay, do you think that Saudi Arabia or Turkey Al-Sheikh is going to, I guess, mirror what Al Heyman does with PBC, for example, primarily TGB promotions, where he uses the promoter? Do you think he would use that? I mean, assuming that like somebody like Eddie Hearn and Oscar De La Hoya and Frank Warren and those guys still want to be involved in some way with this venture. Do you think that connection could work?
They're all going to be hired as advisors and executives. All of them. They're going to be put on a salary for a couple of $1 million plus bonuses and commissions for every athlete that you bring in that wins in fashion or brings the most pay-per-views. They definitely will be striking bonuses for those accomplishments. But they're essentially going to all turn into glorified event organizers and booking agents.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then in the report that came out within the last day or so, it's saying that Matchroom Boxing and Golden Boy Promotions are reportedly involved in discussions. Do you think that how difficult do you think it would be for PBC and Al Heyman to buy into this situation? Do you think it's going to be hard to try to convince somebody like him?
No, because Al Heyman's a very smart, shrewd businessman. He knows what's going on. He follows the money at all times. So I wouldn't put it past us that they're already in cahoots with each other. They're already talking. Al Heyman knows he has to deal with Amazon Prime. I don't think it'd be a big deal for them to be, all right, Amazon, we tried. And they're like, yeah, see you later, pal. It's not going to be a big deal. For him to try to do what I think you're trying to say, like, do you think he'll just be like, nah, fuck you, let me just do my own thing? He's going to hit a dead end very soon. Because it's going to be a monopolized sport where every major promotion company signed underneath this entity, whatever they call it. And PBC is just like the lone wolf. It's not going to work for them. They're going to get squatted within the first year.
Do you think that that's maybe Al Heyman, and in addition to these other promoters, has already kind of been involved in shadow discussions with the Saudis?
Yeah, for sure. I think him, Bob, Oscar, everybody, if not they haven't already, they're about to all fly out and meet each other for like a very secret fucking Illuminati type of meeting where they just kind of talk and be like, yo, what's the deal? What's going on? How much are you guys asking for? What are we worth? Or what is this guy offering? And yeah, they're going to come to some kind of agreement with Turkey there. And look, Turkey, like I said, bro, $5 billion is a drop in the ocean for these guys. They're just going to be like, what is it going to take to buy all your fighters? And that's it. And it's going to be some exciting times ahead. I tweeted yesterday that get ready to see some really cool experimental decision-making happening out of Saudi, because we've already seen how they've done their commercial and content, which, by the way, how awesome are those? Right. Like the commercials and like the lead-up. They're obviously missing a ton of shoulder content where somebody like me would come into play there. But that's neither here or there. But they definitely need. What I was saying was they definitely are going to start making some really creative decision making in their processes of how boxing would look like. And I tweeted yesterday that wouldn't it be awesome to see like the 2028 boxing draft, similar to how NBA and NFL do it, where like you have fighters who just came out of the Olympics, who just came out of Golden Glove championships and amateurs. They're waiting. It'll be a televised event where boxers are just kind of standing at home by their phones with their parents and their girlfriends. They're waiting for that call, and all of a sudden, boom, you get Al Heyman pick up the phone. Hey man, you just got signed to PBC, and like so it could eventually be a very team-oriented, fan-dominant sport where like we're officially part of this. Right now, when you see Top Rank versus PBC, you can finally have jerseys in the stands. You can have merchandise right there at the front of the doors. You can have, pom-poms and hats and streetwear and shoes, just like the way it works now with the LA Lakers and the Clippers when they play at home base with each other. So it's like there could be some interesting ways to like further market the sport of boxing by just leveraging the fact that everybody's underneath the one umbrella.
Now, without delving too much deep into the politics world about this, do you think that the U.S. government, with their position, will chime in with a deal like this because a foreign entity like Saudi Arabia will be essentially creating a league like that, like a UFC, but for boxing? Do you think the U.S. government will create any type of barrier or roadblock here?
I think the government's too concerned with fucking gender equality right now to give a fuck about sports.
Right. No, I understand.
That's my simple answer. I could get deep into politics, but the way that the American system, political sphere, is going on right now, I could talk about this for hours. But there are nowhere near any discussions about what's boxing going to do this year. Like they got bigger issues to fry.
The reason I asked that is because there was a report this week that Saudi Arabia just ended a 50-year agreement with the U.S. About not using the U.S. dollar anymore for I believe oil.
Yeah, so did Russia, so did China. So yep. So there's there's I could talk about this for hours, bro. There's a much bigger culture shift happening than what meets the eye. Boxing isn't the main subject here that's going on. There's an underlying culture war happening right beneath our feet. And sports are not really at the center of it all. They're kind of sidelining it, but it does have an immediate effect. If you follow politics, if you follow geopolitics enough, and if you're following the wars, and if you're following the proxy wars, if you're following what's going on in the Middle East, in their plans for the future, it's not that hard to connect the dots to see where America fits in all this. And they need somebody like Sheikh Turkey to come in and fix their shit. And I will say this. I'll say this. I'm not going to talk too deep on it, but this whole Saudi thing that people are talking about, like why are they here? Why is it now? And who is this Turkey guy? Try to do some homework and find out for yourselves, and just Google if you can one day the vision of Saudi for 2030. This isn't just boxing, guys. It's NASCAR, it's golf, it's entertainment, it's concerts. It's food, it's travel, it's sports, there's media. Every single vertical, Saudi is on their way to conquer each and every vertical. It's one of their missions as a country and as a nation to bring civilization, to bring culture and tourism back to the East, right? So part of their programs is to take over dominant areas such as sports, media. And Turkey is one of 11 and 12 ambassadors of the country, bro, of the kingdom, sorry. He's not the guy. He's one of 11. Go Google what the other 10 are doing, what kind of setups they're doing, what kind of investments they're making, right? Then you'll see the bigger picture, and you'll slowly realize that, oh, shit, these guys got bigger moves to make, and it's not about the $4 billion. That is just a drop in the ocean. But boxing is going to, because we're all fans of the sport and we follow it, it's exciting for us because through our eyeballs and through our goggles, it looks amazing. We finally get the fights that we want as fans. But there's a much deeper, bigger picture happening.
You mentioned golf right now, and when you were talking, Jay, and then obviously for people who don't remember, the listeners who don't remember,
Live Golf.
Live Golf was created over there, and then the PGA obviously got some, were a little bit nervous, so they ended up combining.
They were pissed.
They ended up combining. So, if that's not writing on the wall, would you call that writing on the wall for like a deal with this boxing
Absolutely.
thing?
That's what I was saying. Just look at the track record and then look at what all the other fucking Prince of Saudi Arabias are doing, what other ventures they're involved in. And yeah, I think the PGA, I think the Live Golf, the birth of Live Golf and the merger between them and PGA and what happened, what kind of ruckus and fucking earthquakes were going on. Remember that year? Yeah. Everybody was pissed. But look, what happened to everybody now? Everybody just says, oh, whatever. And now they're still watching golf on DAZN. Yeah. Or sorry. Well, where's Live Golf? Is that on DAZN? Sorry.
I'm sure they have it in some regions in the world, but it's.
I didn't follow it much after the headline. I'm not sure if they're on the zone or if they're like on a. I know they're a UK-based company though. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then talking about the sanctioning bodies here. What happens to them? What do you think?
Yeah, I've been playing with that. I haven't come up with an affirmative thought beyond that yet. But I do ultimately see Mauricio. It's so funny. I saw Mauricio's interview. Did you see the interview of him saying, "Well, I'm Port Saudi, I'm Arabic."
I think I saw something. Yeah, I think I saw
it was so funny, bro. Because I'm just like, bro, you never mentioned that you have any Arabic fucking bloodline up until 2024. You've always been Viva Mexico, Viva this, and Jesus Christ, and all this shit. And the minute you see Turkey, now you want to start remembering that you're part Saudi because your great grandfather's babysitter's fucking half Turkish, whatever the hell it was. But no, I'm kidding. I think his dad was Lebanese or something like that. But once again, nobody ever saw that coming, right? So I think Mauricio, he's pretty much in cahoots with Sheikh. And Sheikh, he's a smart guy. They have the whole team there to kind of dissect everybody's body, sanctioning body, and be okay, which one's really worth it? Which one holds the most weight? And it is WBC, right? So WBC will probably be the running belt, but they'll probably change it up a little bit the way UFC does it. Have the baddest motherfucker belt, have the King of Saudi belt, but it'll all be WBC, like at the end of the day. And I think the rest of them are just going to get dissolved. There's no point in happening all these belts. That's the whole point of the merger.
I mean, do you think that we talked about earlier how, the promoters, Eddie Hearn, De La Hoya, Warren, maybe the executives of those companies would probably be hired as advisors for Saudi Arabia and all this. Do you think somebody like Mauricio or any of these other heads of
he'll be in charge. He'll be in charge of belt creation. Belt distribution. You know what I mean? Some champion wins who's from Pakistan. Mauricio follows him to Pakistan to create the belt. Like he'll be in charge of like some kind of like there'll be a place for him to have a full-time job there, where he'll be the belt runner, you could say. You know what I mean? Like, hey man, we got a fight coming up quick because he's been doing this, bro. I think he's made like 100 belts just in the last 12 months. I've seen 10 different belts, 10 different colors. So he's good at this stuff and he has a passion for it. And I think they might want to expand the WBC Foundation a little bit more to expand it to reach more nations. Maybe do some philanthropic projects on behalf of WBC. There's a lot of good initiatives that WBC could do underneath the Riyadh Kingdom.
Now, let me ask you. This is a topic that Mike actually reminded me of, and he wanted me to touch on with you, which is I thought was a very good topic. How about female boxing? Because knowing the rights and how females live over there in the Middle East, is talking about Saudi Arabia and all that. How does female boxing play into this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a female sport. Why wouldn't females have any recognition there? I think that's a general like pre-conserved American notion that Saudi has something against women when they don't. You can literally, females are free to do what they want there. I mean, of course, there's certain rules that apply to the Muslim women who are locally there. But if you're a tourist there, of course you abide by the rules, just like you would when you visit any other country. Just like Brittany Garner had to, not bring weed into Russia. She got what she got coming. So same thing here. You got to respect the culture, respect the religion. But in terms of female sports, of course you could go. There's been plenty of female reporters in Saudi Arabia who have a great name for themselves. I got a couple of friends myself on Instagram who just came out from Saudi Arabia. They're all wearing like short dresses and sleeveless shirts. I'm like, they're fine. So female boxing, I think that there's going to be a place for it. There's definitely going to be a place for it. Otherwise, they wouldn't allow female journalism into the venue if they were so strict about it. Like times are changing over there. And also, side note, alcohol and this whole thing about Saudi doesn't allow booze. They do allow booze, and I hope people realize that. They just opened up the first liquor store 6 months ago, and it's only exclusive to foreigners. So people like you could go in and, you can get buzzed up. But of course, if you're drinking in public, that's against the country's law. You will get, handled for it. But there's no such thing as getting your hand chopped off or your head chopped off or anything like that. Like this is all just like wonky news that comes out of like the Western media.
Now, let me ask you about what. Obviously, they have a plan over there, and you said that sports, primarily boxing, is not even the big picture for them, but it's just a part of the big picture for them, in that. by 2030, what is going to be the biggest difference in how that country is perceived by the rest of the world?
They're just going to be the center of the world, just like Dubai is. Right now, everybody wants to go to Dubai and experience it. Come to Dubai. You've seen all these memes. Saudi's going to be, I mean, the way that they're, I'm not promoting, I'm not getting paid by Riyadh Season to say this. I just know when I see something valuable, and usually I'm right when I see something. And it just takes a matter of time for it to come into fruition. Saudi, the way that they're trajecting it right now, the footpath that they're on, they are going to be the leading one of the leading economic countries of the world, simply in the areas of education, sports, travel, tourism, and communications. They're building great infrastructure there, great community homes. It's a safe place to live, close to zero fucking crime rate. Like, I think they have like 200 homicides that happened since like last year. Like, it's very low on the crime scale. Food's great, culture's great, art's great, history's great. They got a good crossover between Christianity and Muslim culture there. They're inviting to people. It's not a fucking, you know what I mean? It's not like a gossip state. Education is top of the line there. Schools are top of the line. Healthcare is on top of the line. And now what they want to do is just bring some of the biggest events around the world back to Saudi, right? Saudi walks with a chip on their shoulder against the States, you know? Like, that's literally what it is. They're just like, we can do this better than you, and here's how. And they've shown it over and over again that they can do it better, right? They hire better crews, they hire better personnel, they hire better IT artists. Like, everything's just better there. But when we're talking about sports and boxing in particular, I was talking to somebody on Twitter. I forgot their username. Fuck, he's so funny that every time we tweet about Saudi events, he hates the camera work. And so do I. I don't like the camera work in the way they do, because they film it like it's a soccer game. And it's like, you guys got to, you're missing the footwork and you're missing a lot of stuff. So once again, those are just little nuances that can be fixed over time. But in 2030, expect to see the Oscars hosted there. Expect to see, Eminem headline there. Expect to see the biggest superstars talking about, I'm doing a concert in Saudi. Because as time is progressing, Saudi is becoming more of a progressive country as well. And they're letting go of a lot of their cultural heritage. Their Islamic values are kind of still there in stone, but their main focus is just kind of expanding and being more prominent figure in the world. Now,
how likely, kind of going back into like the U.S. position here, how likely do you think that this, now that it's being reported by, these big mainstream news agencies, how likely do you think this like reaches the halls of Congress and then, in committees and all that where they get involved?
I don't know, bro. That's a hard question to ask. That's a very tough question. Let's just see how the dice roll now. Let's see how the cards play out. This is going to be something that's going to not happen overnight. Like, even if this deal gets announced tomorrow, like look at UFC Endeavor when they merged. They're still not even. Look at the UFC, the WWE announcement happened last year. So far, all we've seen is small crossover appearances at WrestleMania. Right, it takes time to develop the content strategy and the play and how they're going to merge. Like that first matchup of John Cena versus an MMA guy, like that's years to come. That might not even come, right? So it's like, it's something that you just have to kind of be patient on and then move with the wave, and then you can start making like informative decisions based on how the tracking is.
Touching on WWE, I'm sure you remember before the Endeavor purchase and the merging with UFC and all that, there was a report, whether you want to categorize it like that or not, that Saudi Arabia was looking to purchase them, and then obviously that didn't happen. Do you think that maybe, is there any chance that could happen over here? I mean, there's these reports over here, but
it already did though, right? So Saudi is already teamed up with Dana White. Like 2 weeks ago, they made the announcement, and now Dana White just announced his first fight in Saudi this week. So it's already there. Turkey already made the official deal with the UFC. I'm not sure if it was a one-off deal for like a couple of events or if it's long-term, because I know Dana White already has a contract with Abu Dhabi, but I'm not sure about Jeddah or anything like that. So let's see. I haven't been closely following the WWE /UFC /Endeavor and the Saudi Arabia partnership as much as I have with the boxing world, but I'll get back to you on that.
So what is the biggest benefit of Saudi performing this move to create a full-fledged league like the UFC globally? And what is the biggest downfall of a move like this?
Well, the biggest I'll give you a typical resume answer to this. When somebody asks you what's your biggest weakness, and they say my biggest weakness is my strength, I'll give you a very similar answer. Where the biggest positive is the biggest negative, which is virtual reality. As we move closer into a world where everything's going to be virtual, that's already happening, and you got companies like Meta, who I personally had the opportunity to work with closely for the last 8 or 9 months. I've been producing content for them with LaMelo Ball with their virtual headset, and we've been doing stuff for X Stadium, which is live UFC and live NBA events through VR. And it's been a very cool experience for me. I've learned a lot from the team at Meta. I know what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, and they're fucking doing it, number one. They're not stopping at all. And then you got guys like Elon Musk who are already doing like the chips in human brains. So like it's all coming together into one big motion picture that's going to be done virtually. So Saudi already understands this. And so because Saudi understands this, they're already making all the plays for a virtual reality world so that somebody from America doesn't need to travel to Saudi to watch NASCAR, to watch boxing, or to watch the Oscars. You can just put on your headsets and get the live feed, and it's going to feel very real. Why do I say that? Because I've tried on those headsets, and it's not that far off from being real in a few more years. Right? I sat courtside, and when I took those glasses off, I was like, "Oh shit!" Like I forgot I was sitting in my living room for a sec. Right? So, and those are beta test goggles that I was wearing. That's not even out yet. The ones that I was trying at Meta. Right? So imagine what they're working on now that 8 months have passed. They're probably already super ahead of the game again. So the biggest negativity would be just that part, bro. Like human communication, human camaraderie, boys' nights, coming together at the crib, drinking beer together, cheering at the TV. That's going to start slowly fading away, and we're going to come into a world where everybody just hanging out by themselves on a couch with their headset plugged into a laptop. You know what I mean? So that would be a very interesting time ahead.
Do you think that Saudi Arabia and Turkey Al Sheikh have considered an offer to buy DAZN as well?
No, DAZN is set, bro. Those guys are good. They got put the Premier League on there.
It's already like a set product that they've developed, like a following and a base.
You never know. There's probably a fucking we don't know who DAZN's hedge funds people are. We never see them. They're probably already there. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if sheikhs or somebody from the prince side, from the king side, already sits on the board of directors on DAZN. They're a European company, and Saudi and Europe are boys. Like a lot of their investments go back and forth, hand in hand. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're already sitting on the board. But a complete buyout of DAZN is unnecessary because it's not like DAZN's bleeding. I mean, they're on track to be a profitable company this year. It wouldn't make sense for DAZN to sell when they're finally making profit this year, right? Because they've been putting all the work in for the last 6 years. But then again, I'm not the owner of DAZN, so if he feels like selling it because there's an opportunity there to the sheikhs, go ahead, right?
Well, the reason I was asking that, Jay, is because how about the possible notion that if this does happen and the Saudis do buy out all these major promotions and create a league, and if they just like any television show or series or movie or whatever wants to offer their content to a streamer or to a network or anything like that, all these networks and streamers will bid for it. Do you think that, especially the U.S. streamers and even the ones in the UK, do you think it's going to affect the politics of it and being involved with like a Saudi-owned company? You think that would affect it?
No, what I think, and I tweeted this too. I said, if DAZN comes into play, which I think they will, and they are the front runners for the bid, then they'll have total control of the distribution as well. So what that means essentially is they'll just how distribution works, right? Like let's say if I'll bring this home for you in American terms. Like let's say if Fox does a pay-per-view, they can resell the pay-per-view to companies like Pay-Per-View.com, somebody like Telecost Media, somebody like Telemundo, or so everybody can share the pay-per-view rev. So similarly with DAZN, what they could do is redistribute their events with ESPN Plus. It'd be like it's exactly what happened with DAZN and Showtime when Ryan Garcia and Tank fought, except to be a much more normalized event versus the first time when HBO and Showtime did Pacquiao and Floyd. It was like a globally fucking miracle work, but over here it could just be something similar as like this is the normal setup going forward kind of thing,
if you had to kind of guesstimate here, Jay, even though obviously something like this would take a while in terms of putting a deal together, what would you think the estimated time frame on a deal like this to be completed would be?
Given the fact that they just announced this last week, means that they've been talking for the past several months. I'd give it until December for a formal announcement. I think they're going to see what traction Crawford fights has. They want to see because Shake is also a smart guy. He always has a lot of advisors around him. They're like, yo, let's see how we do in LA first, right? Let's see what the vibe is like. Let's see if there's something that we actually want to continue doing in LA. Or because in my opinion, bro, when they come here and they see what kind of trash hole of a city LA is, okay, well, LA is trash, dude. So it's like you can agree with that, right? There's garbage everywhere. They got a homeless fucking problem there. So it's like, I think when they come here and see that kind of environment, they might even just be like, all right, bro, this is just a one-off. Like, let's take all this shit back home, because we have a nice clean area back home we can do this on, and the fans will show up regardless. If they can't, don't worry, because in 5 years everything's VR anyway. Remember, they always think long term. They don't think about tomorrow, which has been the biggest problems of boxing over the last decade. They always just think about tomorrow. When is the next pay-per-view? Go ask any of these execs, what is your 10-year plan, which I've done my entire fucking career since 2017. They could never give me a promise answer. You know what I mean? Saudi has those answers. So I would, to make a Nostradamus type of claim on your show today, it would be December. Talk to me December.
This year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is obviously pretty big news. Obviously, it's not official. It is reports. But how much weight do you think that these mainstream global brand media outlets like Reuters and the New York Times are the ones that were breaking these stories, and not general just boxing news sites?
You got to repeat that again. Well, how does Reuters have what?
Yeah, how much weight does that add to these reports that it was these types of global news agencies like the New York Times and Reuters and all this, and not just because you gotta understand, a lot of these guys are in the pockets of Saudi. So when they want to spill the news, they're not going to use Fight Hub or Fight Hype. They're going to go to Reuters and New York Times. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we do. Like Leonard and Bob Arum and Eddie Hearn, when they want to leak something, they'll go call fucking, they'll call you, they'll call Marco, they'll call, they know who to call. They'll call Ben, they'll call Ellie, and they'll be like, hey, I got some news for you. So basically, in 2 weeks, we plan on doing this. And then they'll just wait for something to leak. Leonard Ellaby is the king of this shit. Before they announce a fight, they want to see how Twitter reacts first. So they put some bullshit claim out there that some fighter's going out or some big news happening, and you guys leak it first. And then the fans suck it up and they start tweeting it. Then it becomes, a viable source of feedback. So for Saudi, for this to be in the Reuters, you're asking, in the New York Times, like, how much weight does that hold? Not much, because it costs a couple $1,000 in a phone call to get it done. Right. Yeah, this is definitely a sport shape-shifting news, especially if it does happen. It's a big play here, and will change the landscape of, not just boxing, but it could affect sports going forward. So this is this big news. Jay, shout out to Android Uppercut. He was the guy that I was talking about earlier, who always complains about the cameras of DAZN. I couldn't get his name. He just tweeted down. Yeah, shout out Android Uppercut. All right, cool. Android Uppercut. You're right there. But Jay, once again, man, obviously we appreciate every single time you've been here on the Last Round Boxing Podcast. You've been on here probably 4 or 5 times already. So we always appreciate it, and I'm sure you'll be on many more times. Any final thoughts on this big news of the Saudi possibly putting all the major promotions together?
Yeah, no, man. Like I said before, it's going to be good for the sport. It's going to be good for the fighters all around. Everybody has like a nice day off. Everybody gets a vacation from the sport should this happen, because the promoters will definitely get a break. The fans get all the fights they want. And, content creators and boxing news outlets such as yourselves will have a lot more to talk about as well.
Yeah. Hopefully it grows the sport at least.
There's a lot of money in it for you too. We could talk offline on how you can kind of take advantage of that.
Yeah, man. I'm all ears. I'll make sure to get Mike involved in that too. So we'll talk offline about that.
Shout out Mike for sure. Yeah, give Mike my regards as well.
Appreciate it, man. Jay, once again, we appreciate you jumping on here on the Last Round Boxing Podcast. Anything else you want to plug before we finish up here?
No, brother, we straight. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
All right, you got it, man. Thanks again to Jay for joining us here on the Last Round podcast. After reviewing and dissecting the big news here of Saudi Arabia and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Turkey al-Sheikh, possibly putting together a boxing league such as a UFC. That's big news. So for my guest of the week and Jay Chaudhry, digital sports executive, I'm Danny Z. This is the Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is the Last Round Podcast.